Fight fans, welcome to the PBC podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thank you all for joining us again. And for our new listeners, thanks for tuning in. Our guests this week are unified world welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr., also known as The Truth, and undefeated bantamweight contender Gary Antonio Russell will stop by as well. We're also going to take a look back at last weekend's action, including that head-scratching decision in the Maestri Fox co-feature. We'll look ahead to Saturday night's big 118-pound championship bout between Guillermo Rigondeaux and Riel-Casimero. That's live on Showtime. And finally, in today's toe-to-toe section, Mike and I will debate who is the greatest fighter at 118 and below of the past 30 years. In short, we've got a lot to unpack this show. So without further ado, let's jump right into the PBC Fight of the Week. This Saturday, August 14th, PBC returns with yet another sizzling summer main event. Two-division champion Guillermo Rigondeaux takes on Riel-Casimero in a 12-round battle for Casimero's WBO World Bantamweight title. Now, the triple header takes place at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, live on Showtime, beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll begin here with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Casimero's 30-4 with 21 knockouts. Rigondeaux 20-1 with 13 knockouts. Casimero is 5-0, not obviously. Casimero's 5-0 in his last 5 with 5 KOs. Rigondeaux 3-1 with 1 no contest, 2 KOs. The loss was to Vasily Lomachenko. Casimero's last fight was a third-round TKO over Duke Micah in September of last September. Rigondeaux defeated Liborio Solis by a split decisions in over 12 rounds in February of 2020, meaning he will have been out of the ring for some time. Casimero, 62% knockout percentage, Rigondeaux 59%. A lot of experience for professional experience for Casimero. 222 rounds, Rigondeaux 134 rounds, Casimero's 32, Rigondeaux is 40 or so we're told. Casimero turned pro in 2007, Rigondeaux 2009, which I can't believe. It's already been 12 years for him. Yeah. Casimero fights from an orthodox stance. Rigondeaux's a southpaw. Casimero's 5'4", Rigondeaux 5'7". Casimero's 64-inch reach, Rigondeaux 67.5, so he has those advantages. Casimero's Filipino, Rigondeaux is Cuban, but he lives in Miami.
Wow. I mean, a couple things jump out at me. One, Casimero, he seems so youthful. He's 32. Not saying that's not youthful, but he fights he fights like someone in his early 20s. And also, he's been a professional longer than Rigondeaux has, although Rigondeaux does have that, extended amateur experience. I mean, this is such a great matchup, Mike. Who is the favorite going in? Is there a favorite going in?
Well, Rigondeaux is a slight betting favorite, according to some research that I did. But this to me is almost a 50-50 fight. Yeah. It's also almost a 50-50 fight according to the odds makers. Rigondeaux obviously is the more gifted, I would say more experienced guy when you factor in the amateur ranks. Two-time Olympic champion. Although maybe that's a push too. And he's pretty good. He's pretty good for a man. He's pretty good anyway, but he's especially good for a man his age. Casimero is younger, as I mentioned, 32, and he's on a roll. He stopped his last 6 opponents. And I'm not sure that his aggressive style is good for Rigondeaux. He's going to apply a lot of pressure. Rigo will have to be at his best to keep Casimero off of him. So I don't know who the favorite is, and that's kind of how it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, that's how it should be going into the great matchups. You mentioned Rigondeaux's age. He's a month away from his 41st birthday. He's had hundreds of amateur bouts. He's been a pro for 11 years. How much more does he have left?
Maybe we'll get a better idea about that, during and after the fight or during the fight. I think he's got more left. He probably isn't as quick as he used to be, but he's still plenty fast. He has that special ring acumen, and he hasn't been particularly active, meaning he's probably pretty fresh in that regard. I thought he looked pretty good against Liborio Solis in his last fight. He used his safety first approach, which he had become known for after taking some hard shots early in the fight. And I just thought he outboxed Solis, which is what he does. On the other hand, he's been out of the ring for a year and a half. I doubt that'll help him. Bottom line for me, though, he's still a formidable fighter from what I could tell.
Yeah, and even if he's lost a step, he's still a few steps ahead of nearly everybody else. What do you think are each fighter's advantages in this bout?
Well, as I said, Rigo can still box. He's still pretty quick, and he has that experience. He can also punch a little when he wants to. Casimero has youth, of course. He's 8 years younger. He has that pressure style, which can work well against a pure boxer. We've seen that happen many times. And as I said, he's got experience too. Remember, he's won titles in 3 divisions. He's a seasoned guy too. Yeah. So I would say Rigo's boxing skills, maybe his quickness, and Casimero's youth and his style.
Now, with that in mind, you alluded to Casimero's pressure style. How do you expect the fight to play out?
I think Casimero is going to try to just stay on top of Rigondeaux, who's going to try to move and counter. The question is whether the Filipino can catch Rigondeaux consistently enough to land enough punches to win the fight. I think he will, although it's not going to be easy. I expect Casimero to land more and more punches as the fight progresses and possibly wear Rigondeaux down.
So you're picking Casimero, or?
You know what? This is one of the hardest predictions that we've had to make in a long, long time. I honestly see this as 50-50. I don't feel particularly confident about this, but I think this is Casimero's time. I think he's going to win a close decision or maybe even stop Rigondeaux late. But I don't feel really good about that. I think Rigondeaux has a really good chance of winning this fight.
Yeah, I tell you what, I feel that this is Casimero's time. There's just some nagging feeling I have about this fight where I just think Casimero is going to overwhelm this guy. And I think we've seen Rigondeaux get hit more in recent years and been a little more vulnerable. I think if Casimero can avoid his bombs, you mentioned Rigondeaux's power, and man, he does hit hard. I think folks forget that. If he can avoid that, I think he can land enough and outwork Rigondeaux and win a close split decision. So I guess nothing really changes here in terms of the prediction league, but we both could wake up on Sunday morning with something on our face. So
exactly,
we will see. Now in the co-feature, unbeaten Gary Antonio Russell, who you'll hear from in a little bit, takes on former world champion Emmanuel Rodriguez for the WBA interim bantamweight title. Another tough bout to predict. Mike, what can fight fans expect in this one?
Well, these guys aren't brawlers, so I don't expect a wild fight. I do expect an entertaining fight, though. They're both talented guys, and they fight with intelligent, responsible aggression, if you will. They do try to hurt their opponents, which is the kind of matchup that I like. Yeah. I think it's a good matchup. I expect the early rounds to be something akin to a chess match as they try to figure each other out. But I think it's going to heat up as the rounds progress, and someone is likely to get hurt along the way. I really like this fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's a big step up for Russell. So we're definitely going to find out what he's made of in that matchup. Now, in the Showtime televised opener, we've got another good bantamweight battle. That's 3 for those keeping count. Former champ Rashi Warren taking on Damian Vasquez in a 10-round bout. Quick prediction league update. I am 22 wins, 4 losses, 3 draws, and I guess 1 no decision. Mike is 20 wins, 6 losses, 3 draws. That will not change this week. It is time to bring in our first guest. He comes from boxing royalty, as older brother Gary Jr. is the longest reigning champ in boxing today, and younger brother Gary Antoine is one of the rising stars of the game, the undefeated bantamweight contender Gary Antonio Russell. Gary, first things first, how has camp been for your fight this Saturday?
Camp be great. We had 8 weeks, 9 weeks actually. Got our strength and conditioning good. Lost weight healthy. Got the good sparring there. Camp was great.
What can you tell us about your opponent, Emmanuel Rodriguez?
I know he's an ex-champion. He's a rangy kind of boxy-like fighter. He likes to punch in combinations. He has decent hand speed and a good ring IQ. I think overall he's a good fighter.
Rodriguez has had a couple of rough outings recently, lost by KO to Naoya Inoue. But before that, he beat some pretty good fighters. He beat Paul Butler and Jason Maloney. Do you think he might be better than people give him credit for, or might think he is?
Yeah. I think he's a better fighter than what people make him out to be. Actually, his last outing, his last fight, I actually thought he won.
There you go. There was talk of you fighting Rodriguez prior to your fight with Juan Carlos Payano. Now you get him Saturday night. What is it about Rodriguez that has you going after him?
He's the ex-champion. I feel like he's one of the people that's standing in my way to fighting a champion. So I feel like it was perfect timing. I feel like he's the perfect candidate for me to get next in line to fight for an actual belt.
The next step. Got it. Yeah.
Now, Mike brought up the Payano bout. You won a technical decision in that fight when it was stopped due to Payano's cuts. What did you learn from that entire experience?
I learned a lot, and actually it wasn't so much about the boxing that I learned. I learned a lot about myself during them times. I recently lost my younger brother the same week in which I had to fight Payano. That Monday, and mentally going into that fight, I don't know where I was. I knew I was in shape physically, but mentally I knew I was somewhere else, but I didn't back down out of the fight. Actually, people thought that I was or that I should have. Like after it, I realized I was a lot stronger mentally than what I thought I ever was. I didn't like my performance due to my mental. I felt like I was kind of locked a little bit. I felt like I was stiff. I don't know, just mentally I wasn't there. After the fight, I completely broke down and just left immediately, right after, But now I feel as though I'm in a better mental space.
Oh, okay. I know you wanted to make a big statement in that fight, and you ended up with your hand raised, but did it still feel like sort of a letdown?
Honestly, I can't even tell you. I don't know what I was feeling. After my fight, boxing went completely out the window. The fight went completely out the window. I thought nothing of it anymore.
Yeah, that must have been an awful week for you, the whole thing. So yeah, fully understand. We see your brother Gary Jr. in your corner. What advice did he give you after that fight?
Honestly, it wasn't just I who lost someone; they did too. So honestly, after the fight, it was just a little bit of grief. Everyone was still down. It was so fresh. Everyone still dissecting everything that happened. Months later, he definitely came to me and talked. He'd be like, "Man, you held it together through the fight.
Right.
I feel as though you're strong." He said, "But it's still certain things as a fighter that you should have held on to during that fight." He said, "But we ain't gonna hold on to it. We know what we was all going through as a family. We're gonna take it and we're gonna learn from it."
Speaking of your brothers, Gary Jr. obviously has had tremendous success. Gary Antoine is making some loud noise right now. Is there pressure for you to keep pace with them, or is it merely like a motivating factor for you, or is it both?
I don't try to keep up with them. I do me. All of us are gonna shine. We all gonna shine. And honestly, I just try to focus on being the best me that I could be. That's pretty much it. But it is very motivating as well. I always want to see my brothers do great, and it's a lot better to even see us all doing great in the same field.
So you guys sort of feed off each other?
Of course.
That's awesome to hear. Gary Jr. he's sort of a slick. He's a complete boxer. Gary Antoine can box very well, but goes after his opponents hard. For those who might not have seen you fight, how does your style compare to your brothers?
I I can't really say. It's weird. I hear a lot of people say we fight alike, just in different ways. They never can really elaborate on it good enough. But in my opinion, I feel as though I'm just a little more. I seem a little more relaxed. I just my swag, my charisma is a little different than it. My creativity is a little different than theirs.
I like
I feel
that.
like we all kind of possess the same thing. We just use our creativity differently.
Yeah. Now, this fight has huge implications for the 118-pound division. Is there anyone in particular that you're targeting?
No, it's not. I'm just looking to keep the line moving, get past Emmanuel Rodriguez and whoever they ask for next, or they decide to put in front of me. I go with my camp and see what we talk about. We'll go from there. But the goal to be a champion is to fight all of them, right?
Yeah.
There you go. So in your opinion, aside from yourself, who are the top guys in the division right now?
My opinion, in order. Guillermo, Rigondeaux. It's between Rigondeaux, then Denito, then anyway.
So you have anyway number 4 or number 1?
Number 1.
Okay. Interesting.
Got it. How far away do you feel you are from fighting, a guy like Anyway, getting that world title shot?
I don't know. It varies now. I don't really know. I can't really say. I know I get past Emmanuel Rodriguez. That puts me in a closer position to fighting them. But, I could have step-up fights, tune-up fights in between or anything. I don't know. So I could say probably at least 7, maybe 8 more fights. I don't know. Maybe sooner, maybe less.
Okay.
That's interesting. Switching gears for a second, you've got a lot of talent outside the ring. For instance, a lot of people don't know you taught yourself sign language. How difficult was that, and what made you do it?
Honestly, out of all the bros, I was always kind of an introvert. I never really talked to too many people. I drive around all day and listen to no music. So I was in the gas station, and this girl was trying to order something. But everybody was laughing at her. I was like, what is she doing? And I noticed she was deaf. And I pulled up something on my phone. And the rep was like, are you deaf? She was like, yes. And I was like, oh, how can I help you? And from that moment right there, I was like, dang, I really couldn't talk to her. The language barrier really stops people from interacting with one another, whether it's sign language or Spanish or anything. So I went and I started texting her, and she told me to watch some movies to learn how to sign. Or good movies that she watched and that have signs in it. And I watched this movie called The Shape of Water, in which this female who works for the CIA did sign language. And most of the movies were quiet, so I had to pick up on it, go to read, and I just kept watching that movie over and over. And I was like, okay, a lot of signs make sense. So I just went on from there, started reading books, looking at videos, and it just stuck with me.
That's awesome.
Amazing. Yeah. That's. Have you had to use it since then, or?
Oh yeah. I use it often. I use it often now, especially with my daughters. I use it often now. I actually have a few friends who are in the ASL community, the deaf community. I'm actually working on a clothing line for one of my friends who is deaf as well.
That's amazing.
So I actually use it a lot more often now.
Oh. Now, what about your chess game? Can you beat Gary Jr. in chess?
No. No, I cannot.
Honest man.
Is he the best of the family, or?
I don't know. That's hard to say.
Wow.
That's hard to say.
Wow.
It's really hard to say. Gary Allen gives him a run for his money.
Interesting.
Gives him a run for his money.
A lot of stuff going on there. Going back to when you were kids, growing up with these guys, was there a lot of competitiveness in general between you and your brothers?
Of course. We was all boys. We always want to do everything good. We always want to do everything better than the next. It came from a love place, though. We did each other on to try to see who could get better or who could do better. So of course.
Got it. What are your thoughts on Gary Jr.'s career as it stands right now? Who would you like to see him get in the ring with?
Honestly, I would like to see him. I gotta think about this because people ask me this a lot, and I always brush it off. I would like to see him fight a Gervonta Tank Davis.
Whoa!
All right,
Okay.
I
would like to see him. I would like to see him fight Lomachenko again.
Yeah, that's not a good one.
Yeah.
Dang, who else would I honestly want to see him fight?
What about Elias Santa Cruz?
I used to want to see that fight. Honestly, I used to want to see that fight before Tank beat him. Not taking anything away from him. He's a great fighter. I just wanted one of my brothers to be the first to take his zero away. That's all.
Gotcha.
That's all. But I feel as though it would still be a great fight if it happened.
Yeah.
I still feel like that would be a great fight if it happened.
Sure.
Someone else I would want to see him fight. If he was big enough, I would actually like to see him fight Teofimo Lopez too.
Ooh, that's another good one.
Well, you picked 3 of the biggest names in the sport.
Yeah, right. Let's make it happen, boxing guys.
You did pretty well. What about Gary Antoine? Is there a big fight you'd like to see him get over the next year?
Next year, not offhand. Offhand. I don't know anyone that I would want him to fight offhand. I know who I would like to see him fight in the future.
Who's that?
Boots?
I would like to see him fight like Robert Easton.
Okay.
Even though Jose Ramirez lost, I would like to see him fight Jose Ramirez.
It's a good fight.
And I would like to see him. I would like for him to fight the guy who beat Jose Ramirez too. Forgive me, I forget his name offhand.
Josh Taylor.
Yeah, Josh Taylor.
Yeah,
I would like to see him fight Josh Taylor too.
Man, the Russell brothers think big. I like that.
I like it. Now, getting back to you, what is it about Gary Antonio Russell that separates him from his peers at 118?
I have a lot of swag. I have a lot of in my arsenal that I have yet to be able to display, and I guess it's because the level of competition in which I was fighting. You know, what separates me, I bring this deceptive punching power that I haven't been really display just yet. An inside skill, an outside boxing skill, all these things that I have yet to really get a chance to display. So come the 14th, hopefully people get to make their own decision on what it is that separates me.
Well, you kind of hinted there, but last question: can we get a prediction out of you for Saturday? How does the fight with Rodriguez play out?
They play out me victorious. It plays out me victorious.
We'll just leave it at that. Hopefully, we see that punching power.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. We're looking forward to your fight against Rodriguez this Saturday on Showtime, and hopefully we'll have you back afterward.
All right, thank you.
Cuban legend Guillermo the Jackal Rigondeaux takes the ring.
The Jackal unloads. This guy's a genius inside the ring.
Standing in his way, he's one of boxing's most vibrant champions.
Riel-Casimero. He's got personality. He's got power. He is a force.
Rigondeaux versus Casimero for the 118-pound world title. Live on Showtime.
It's time for the week in review. Last Saturday, Fox PBC Fight Night returned with an intriguing main event as rising unbeaten welterweight contender Eimantas Stanionis took on former champ Luis Collazo. And it was a fun fight for as long as it lasted. In the fourth, an accidental clash of heads opened up a gash over Collazo's right eye, and he was unable to continue. Because 4 rounds hadn't been completed, the fight was ruled a no decision. Mike, what were your thoughts on the fight up to that point?
Stanionis didn't get the victory he wanted, but we saw what we saw. We saw a gifted, heavy-handed guy in my opinion, dominate an opponent who's still pretty good for a 40-year-old. Stanionis landed really hard punches at a high rate, which is always a recipe for success. I have to hand it to Collazo. He took those shots like a champ and continued to fight back with some success at times. The problem was that he landed about half the punches that Stanionis landed, and they didn't do any damage. And all the while, he was just eating shot after shot after shot after shot. I think he was fortunate that and you could argue that he was fortunate that the clash of heads happened and ended the fight, because I think he would have taken a bad beating.
Yeah, I thought Collazo looked good. He looked like Collazo. He looked sharp. He looked crafty. But Stanionis is on another level, and he looked very sharp as well and willing to go to war. He's got such a fun yet well-schooled style, just beautiful to watch. And, it's always disappointing when you have a no decision. I felt unfulfilled, as I'm sure many of you did. But, Mike, you kind of alluded to this. In your opinion, what would have happened if the fight had continued?
Yeah, as I said, I think he might have been fortunate, because he was just eating so many hard punches. I was actually kind of amazed that he took him the way that he did.
To the head and body.
Yeah, to the head and body. You're right. And I'm thinking more of the headshots. Well, both of them actually. He's just like kept coming. It's like the dude's got a crazy chin. He really does. But at some point that's gonna, and I thought some point soon that was gonna begin to wear him down. It had to. Yeah. And he was just too easy to hit. Yeah. And Stanionis just one after the other. I think 2, 3, 4 rounds of fight would have been over anyway.
Yeah, and Stanionis, his accuracy is just frightening. I picked him to win by decision, but like after 3.5 rounds, I thought, goodness, he's going to stop him. He's going to break him down and get him out of there in impressive fashion. Perhaps Collazo realized it too. I don't know. After the fight, he reiterated that he planned to retire. If he does, what are your thoughts on his career?
Watching him on Saturday, in spite of what I said before, sort of reminded me how good he was. He never won a major title, only a secondary one, but he had a lot of success. He came up short in pretty much almost all of his biggest fights. He lost to guys like Ricky Hatton, Shea Mosley, and Andre Berto when he was in his prime. But he generally gave his best opponents a difficult time. He's crafty, tough, hard-punching guy. And he was still competitive even as he approached 40. He won some fights not that long ago. He looked pretty good. He was skillful, tough, had power, and he was fun to watch, which is something that's important to me. I'll remember him fondly, and I believe strongly that he should be proud of what he did over 20 plus years in the ring. Yeah. He was an elite guy for a long time.
Yeah, he was. One of the first fights I ever attended was his bout versus Ricky Hatton. It was in Boston. Took a road trip, and quite frankly, I thought he was robbed. He also dropped Hatton in the last round, as far as I'm concerned, but it was ruled a slip. It was just a wild night. But, so many big wins and surprises in his career. Heck, a lot of folks thought he was on his way to beating Kudratila Abdukakarov in 2019, his last fight, before the fight was stopped on cuts. Just a pro's pro, and I wish Stanionis would have gotten more rounds in with Collazo, because he would have learned a lot.
True.
Now, speaking of Stanionis, where does he go from here?
He looked like a guy who's ready for a top 10, or for sure, and at least a top 15 contender. I'm sure he thinks he's ready for Jamal James. Like right now, James holds the WBA's top title, and he might be right. He might be advanced enough or seasoned enough to give James big problems. I might hold off 1 or 2 more fights though. Maybe he fights Gabriel Maestre, who's ranked and beat Michael Fox on the undercard Saturday. Maybe another guy that jumped to mind was a guy like Sergey Lipinets, who would be a test. Jesse Vargas is always out there, I guess. Anyway, I think it's time for Stanionis to fight the next level guy. I think he's progressed to that point.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's the number 1 contender in the WA welterweight rankings, which is the belt currently held by Yordenis Ugas. I actually love to see him against Jamal James right now. And James holds the regular title. I also like a fight between Stanionis and Abel Ramos, who's ranked number 2 by the WA when I was looking it up. And look, if he wins decisively in that next bout, perhaps you put him in against Ugas after that, or even a Keith Thurman. I honestly think he's a fight away. That's how sharp he looked on Saturday night. Now, we had some controversy in the co-feature Another 147-pound scrap amateur standout, Gabriel Maestre, was supposed to face Cody Crowley, but Crowley caught COVID, and Michael Fox stepped in on days' notice. And after 12 rounds of action, it appeared much of the crowd at the Armory in Minneapolis, and much of the boxing world apparently, thought Fox, who dropped Maestre in the first and did outbox him for long stretches, had won the fight. But this is boxing, and of course, Maestre won a unanimous decision, with one judge scoring about 117-110 in his favor. Mike, what were your thoughts on that decision?
I was as stunned as Fox was when the decision was announced. I thought Fox controlled the fight with that long jab. The dude's 6'3", 6'4", which is really tall.
Scary.
For that division. He moved really well. The guy's a really good athlete, and he had more than enough power. He landed more than enough power shots to win rounds, in my opinion. He dropped the guy, as you mentioned. It looked to me like Maestre was frustrated most of the fight. He was chasing, but rarely catching the guy. A guy who was quicker and a lot more athletic than he was. Honestly, I don't understand the scoring, especially that one lopsided card. I don't say this often, but I really believe that Fox was robbed in this fight.
Yeah, the thing, I'll tell you what, I'm typically indifferent when it comes to bad decisions in boxing. I've just grown apathetic, but this one kind of bothered me. Late substitute comes in. He's had some hard luck in the past, but is talented with a lot of physical tools. And on the big stage, he puts it all together. And not only does he appear to win, but you're thinking, man, you mentioned he's like 6'3", 6'4", but this guy might be a tough out for a lot of 147-pounders if he fights, if he gains even more confidence from this victory, going forward. But you can't dwell on it too long, because in an instant, he's relegated to the also-ran simply because of, some questionable judging. That said, I feel those scorecards are sort of covering up what happened in the ring, particularly with Maestre. Mike, what were your thoughts on him after seeing his performance Saturday night?
Well, he came in the fight with he has got this vast amateur experience, but he came in the fight with only 3 pro fights under his belt. I think he's got a ways to go. To me, he looked kind of lost in there. He was the aggressor. I'll give him that. He went after Fox from beginning to end, but I don't believe you ever really figure out how to cut off the ring to do what he wanted to do, at least not consistently. Listen, Maestre has a great amateur foundation. He's a strong, heavy-handed guy. He looks promising to me for sure. That said, I think he needs work. I know he wants to move up the ladder quickly because of his age. He's 34. I just think that might be a mistake to go too quickly. He needs a little time. He needs a little time to grow.
Yeah, I think Saturday night showed that. And, to his credit, he says he's willing to do a rematch. Where does Fox go from here? I mean, he's got the rematch, hopefully, but I'm not sure what else you can do with him.
I hope he isn't too discouraged over the decision. He looked damn good to me. Love the height, the reach, the athleticism. He was poised in there, which was maybe a little bit surprising. He even showed us a little bit of power, dropping the guy like the way he did. I saw a guy who could succeed in this business. I hope that his performance convinced him of that, and that he continues to progress. I think we're going to see more good things out of this guy.
Yeah, and you mentioned the power, which we hadn't seen from him before, and I thought to myself, well, if he sits on his punches like that, he's got the power. You can just tell looking at his frame. So I do hope we see more of him, regardless of the decision. I think he's earned himself another notable fight on the big stage. Now, in the televised opener, Luke Santamaria outboxed and outworked Devin Alexander to win a 10-round unanimous decision in 154-pound action. Mike, what were your thoughts on that fight?
Well, like most people, I think I wanted to see, the main thing was I wanted to see how much Alexander had left. I don't think it was utter domination on Santamaria's part, but he was a step ahead of Alexander, and he outworked him, almost the entire fight, even though Alexander had 5.5 pounds on him. He came in way overweight. I think Santamaria deserved the decision I guess you can call it a competitive fight, but I think Santamaria handled him.
Yeah. Now, Alexander's 34, which is not too old by boxing standards, but he's been in a lot of wars, and he hasn't notched the win in his last 4 fights. Where does he go from here?
I always hesitate to suggest that anyone should retire from something they love doing, and it seems to me that Alexander still loves to box. That said, he might want to consider hanging him up. I don't know if he's shot per se. He showed some quickness and decent timing, I thought. Again, though, he was always a step behind Santa Maria. He wasn't active enough in the end. He just didn't have it. Something was missing. As you mentioned, the man hasn't won a fight in quite some time, and he's 2-6-1 in his last 9 fights. That's not the record of a guy who's going to win a championship. And it leads me to the question: what's the point? It's just not happening for him. He's had a really good career. He won major titles in 2 divisions. He has so much to be proud of.
Right.
He's not old, as you said, but in his case, now might be the time.
Yeah, you may be right there. What about Santa Maria? What should be next for him?
I thought it was a solid performance by Santa Maria. He's a pretty good fighter. He beat Fox, which Maestri couldn't do, in my opinion. Yep. And he was competitive in defeat against a good prospect in Paul Kroll. He lost the fight, but he acquitted himself pretty well. Now he has a good name on his list of victims. It was a good night for him. I think there's something there. He's pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. And we'll see where he's moved to next. It's time to bring in our next guest this week. We can't wait to see him in the biggest boxing event of the year as he takes on the legendary Manny Pacquiao Saturday, August 21st at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, live on Fox Sports pay-per-view. The undefeated, unified WBC and IBF World Welterweight Champion, The Truth, Errol Spence Jr.
Man, Errol, first things first. I saw you at Charlo Castano. You were looking in great shape. You still look, you look in fantastic shape. How has training been for you so far?
Training's been great. I mean, it's been weird, been a lot of hills and bumps, but it's been great, man. I think without that would make a training camp. So I mean, it's been great. Been training hard, been focused. Small partners, got real small partners. That's real fighters, guys that really been bringing it. So it's been great work.
Have they been able to mimic what Manny does, like the in and out, the combinations, and all the awkwardness?
Yeah, I got one guy that mimics Manny well, but I got another guy. He's just strong as hell and very, very tough. So. So, it's great work for him. I enjoy it.
Errol, as we all know, Pacquiao has become a legend. How does it feel knowing you're going to share the ring with a guy like that?
It feels great. A lot of guys don't get this opportunity. A lot of guys, want the opportunity. You can tell before my fight was even announced, guys were coming out saying that they were going to fight Manny Pacquiao. You had 4 or 5 guys coming out saying that. So, it's an honor and a blessing. I got to make the most out of this opportunity.
Were you surprised by his performance against Thurman the last time he was in the ring?
Nah, I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, Pacquiao guy that comes out and just fights, the whole 12 rounds. And, Keith Thurman's been a little bit inactive and, bad injuries, things like that. I thought Keith Thurman was going to do better, but, Pacquiao showed why he's a living legend.
That's it. You and Manny held the kickoff press conference about a month ago. Going face-to-face with a guy like that, did you see anything in his eyes and his body language that day? Anything that stood out to you?
Nah, man. The Pacquiao's been boxing way too long, and been in with too many top fighters to basically see anything. I wasn't gonna. I mean, I wasn't gonna see anything. I think if I did a face-off with him a million times, I'll probably see the same thing. You got to come to fight and bring it, and he's a blood and guts warrior. So
looking at you now, even you're pretty lean. How far away are you from the welterweight limit?
Oh, I'm not too far away. I'm right there. Boxing never just tell they wait.
Are you worried at all about overtraining or doing too much in this camp?
No, not at all. I mean, Not at all. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, so, and I believe you can overtrain, but I mean, that's because you just working too hard and, you just pushing yourself to the limit. So, I mean, it's a thin line between everything. So, I mean, you got to have recovery and, take ice baths and get massages and other things like that. Make sure you get your sleep and just listen to your body. That's something that I had to do. Just listen to my body, and when it's time to just cut it short, you gotta cut it short.
Errol, you said you were about 75-80% of yourself when you beat Danny Garcia last December. What couldn't you do in that fight, or how do you believe you'll be different on August 21st?
I think that fight, I think one thing I didn't rehydrate right. I think that fight, I probably woke up in the morning probably like 54 or so, just drinking water and not really just putting sodium back in my body and things like that. So I think with that, I could have been a lot stronger, a lot sturdier, I basically just wasn't rehydrated right and wasn't doing the right things to get me to that point. So I feel like this fight I'll be a lot physically stronger, and just a lot fluent overall.
So that didn't have anything to do with the accident then. It was a rehydration problem.
Yeah, it was a rehydration problem, and a little bit from the accident, but not as much.
Got it. So you also brought back Bouhairie, your old strength and conditioning coach, back into your camp. Can you tell us what kind of difference he's made for you?
Big difference, just because I'm a guy that I don't do ab workouts at all. So he got me back on working my abs out and working my core out and doing push-ups and pull-ups and a lot of strength conditioning that that's gonna make me stronger physically. Of course, some days you feel like shit or you feel real tight, things like that, but I think it smooths out the week of the fight. For at least for me, it do.
Now, the build-up to this fight has been really cordial, but there have been some things being said I'm noticing lately, and I know you listen to everything, so you've probably heard some things as well. But Freddie Roach is like, Manny's lives a cleaner lifestyle, or Errol's not the same since the accident, or you're flat-footed, or Keith Thurman is a better fighter than you. How do you feel when you hear stuff like that, and does it motivate you?
I mean, Freddie is a guy that always, they always try to stir the pot anyway. So, I mean, it definitely motivates me, but, I'm not going to go in there and do anything reckless or try to prove a point or anything like that, Just going to stick to the game plan and listen to my coach and the people around me and, come out with the victory. So, of course, Freddie Roach gonna say a lot of things. He gotta say something because me and Manny Pacquiao haven't been saying nothing. So, he gotta try to stir the pot and try to, say some stuff that, get me or my coach going.
Now, you're a student of the game. I heard you talking about watching Hopkins versus Trinidad. For this fight, is it all about just getting the win, or are you looking to make a statement with your performance?
Definitely make a statement. I feel like all my fights, that's why I'm in the position I am in now. And I think that's why a lot of fans have drawn to me, because I'm a guy that, make a statement inside the ring, and that goes the same for this fight. I'm definitely going to try to make a statement, try to prove a point, and try to tell everybody and try to convince everybody that I am the best 147-pounder, in the division.
Sounds like you want the knockout.
We'll see.
Errol, we saw how Floyd Mayweather reached the highest level when he fought Oscar De La Hoya. Manny did it when he fought De La Hoya. Do you believe this is the fight that could do that for you?
I think it definitely is a crossover fight for me. Manny Pacquiao is definitely bringing different fans and a different fan base, to myself and to this fight, that I haven't seen before, or probably haven't seen me fight before. A lot of the older crowd, or a lot of Filipinos, or you're just gonna cross me over. So I feel like everybody knows Manny Pacquiao is. I feel like he is a crossover star, and he is bringing that crossover appeal to this boxing match.
Last thing, you've been at welterweight for nearly a decade now, since the start of your career. I know you want to unify, but that would mean 2 fights, one for the WBA and one for the WBO titles. How much longer do you plan to stay at 147?
I really want to go back to this fight. Like I said, it depends on who's the opponent, just for me to stay at this weight. And I've been at 147 for, like you said, a decade. Before that, I was in the amateurs. I was at 152. So I've been at this weight for a long time, and it's just time for me to move up and see where it's at 154 pounds.
Errol, fantastic to talk to you. Can't wait for this fight. And best of luck.
Sure. Yeah, we'll see you there.
All right, here we go. Manny Pacquiao. Errol Spence Jr. What a shot.
To be a legend,
Told us to watch Pacquiao next.
you have to beat a legend.
Pacquiao, Spence Jr., August 21st, live on pay-per-view. Buy now on the Fox Sports app and watch on any screen you want.
It's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. Now, this week, we're going to take a look back at the last 30 years and identify the greatest fighter of that time from 118 pounds and below. Mike, we will start with your pick.
Okay, to preface this, you realize doing research for something like this that there have been so many great fighters among the littlest guys over the past 3 decades. I mean, just to throw some names out there: Nonito Donaire, Johnny Tapia, Mark Johnson, Srisaket Rungvisai, Juan Francisco Estrada, Manny Pacquiao, Pong Saklik, Won Jung Kam, that might sound weird to some people, but he had a long reign as champion. Yeah. Humberto Gonzalez, Michael Carbajal. I mean, these guys are current or future Hall of Famers, and all of them are great fighters. To me, though, the best fighter at 118 below over the past 30 years came down to 2 guys, Ricardo Lopez and Roman Gonzalez. With no disrespect to any of the other guys, cases could be made for them. Lopez was one of a handful of fighters to retire undefeated. He was 51-0-1 with 38 knockouts. He was just an absolute boxing wizard under trainer Nacho Beristain. He also had power, as you can see by his knockout record, 38 KOs. Purists just absolutely love this guy. And he had a remarkable track record. He was 25-0-1 in world title fights, which is just ridiculous. He was strawweight champ for 9 years, and then a junior fly title holder for 3 more. So 12 years at the pinnacle of the sport. He was just a special fighter. And I'll just tell you about my thoughts on Gonzalez. Gonzalez has been a true force of nature, a guy who's just overwhelmed one opponent after another with super intelligent aggression and punching power that ranks with anyone else, really, pound for pound. He held titles in 4 divisions: straw, junior fly, junior bantam, over a span of 9 years, which matches Lopez's run at strawweight in terms of time on the top. And he did something I don't believe Lopez ever did. He climbed to number 1 on most pound-for-pound lists, which was unthinkable at one time for a fighter of his size. Plus, Gonzalez faced, and I love this part of him, you could also argue against him with this, but Gonzalez faced adversity and then overcame it. Losing those fights to Sorungvasai in 2017 after the sudden death of his trainer, which I think screwed him up, only to bounce back and beat Caliafai to regain a 150-pound title when a lot of people thought the guy was finished. And so that was just epic. So do you want my choice?
Yes.
Hope that wasn't too much background, but I wanted to give you an idea what the thought process was.
No, I'm curious because I have an opinion about this, but go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to say this was so hard. I honestly believe a case can be made for both of these guys. I want to say Lopez because he was a better pure boxer and he retired undefeated. I also want to say Gonzalez because he was so successful over 4 weight divisions, was pound for pound #1, and might have fought guys, Valoria, Sorungvasai, Estrada, Quadras, who were more accomplished or at least more recognizable than Lopez. So this is tough, but I'm going to go with Lopez. Again, I think he was a better pure boxer and could knock anyone out with one punch, and he did it a lot. He had similar longevity to Gonzalez although it was over 2 divisions, not over 4. And he had that perfect record. Gonzalez might have fought slightly better opposition, but I don't remember Lopez ever ducking anyone, at least not that I knew about. He fought the best guys out there. So this is essentially a push for me, but I'll go with Lopez if I have to choose one guy. And I wanted to add one thing, and then I'll just turn it over to you. Another guy currently fighting might surpass both Lopez and Gonzalez. I'm talking about Naoya Inoue. I think you can argue that he's ahead of them right now. Sure. The man has absolutely no weaknesses. I don't think Lopez did either, but he has absolutely no weaknesses that I can tell. Some have him on top of their pound for pound list, although Canelo Alvarez is the consensus choice right now. Inoue has already won titles in 3 divisions. He's just a once in a generation kind of talent, but he's only had 21 fights. I think he needs to prove a little bit more, have a little bit more success to pass legends like Lopez and Gonzalez. I think he might do that, though.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does. I think you could make a case that he's already surpassed Ricardo Lopez, which kind of tells you what I think of that debate between Lopez and Chocolatito. And I love Lopez. He was a beautiful fighter to watch. That style, his movement, he threw every punch textbook in the book, the pivots, the body punching. He had so many tricks in his bag. And, he was, I don't want to say he was a rich man's Juan Manuel Marquez, because Marquez went on to accomplish greater things than Lopez did. But I kind of feel like Lopez was the original. And then Marquez sort of came after him, and both were trained by Nacho Beristain, so I guess it makes sense that why they fight so similarly. Rafael Marquez as well. I just think Chocolatito accomplished a little more, beat better opposition, and that's why I pick him over Ricardo Lopez. However, the person I chose over both of them as the greatest fighter, 118 pounds and under of the past 30 years, is none other than the Filipino Flash, Nonito Donaire. And I feel the Flash, the pizzazz, is probably part of the reason why I have him over those guys. But not just that, not just because he had incredible hand speed, exquisite knockout power, because he reminded me of my favorite fighter, Roy Jones, but look at the guys he beat. I mean, respected champions like Fernando Montiel, Jorge Arce, Vic Darchinyan, Rafael Concepcion, beat a lot of undefeated fighters through 3 divisions. We can't even get to the 4th division where he won a title because it's not in that category. But even still, I feel that he's a cut above the rest. And again, he beat these fighters, and he beat them in explosive fashion. I mean, in knockout impressive fashion. Look at the knockout of Vic Darchinyan. Look at the knockout of Montiel. Those are highlight reel type KOs, and he was just a brutal, vicious fighter during that time. So my choice is, the Filipino Flash, Nonito Donaire, without question. And that is not a knock on the 2 fighters you mentioned, both of whom I have a great deal of respect for. I've always loved Chocolatito. I remember when I used to work for Boxing News, and I used to cover his fights, I believe on Telemundo or Telefutura, I don't remember. But, this was years ago, and I just remember thinking way before he was on HBO, and I remember thinking, who is this guy? He's incredible. Why isn't he on pound for pound list? Why isn't his name on the lips of everybody? Ultimately, he did earn all of that, although, much, much later in his career. And Ricardo Lopez, of course, fortunately for him, Don King would always stack those pay-per-view cards, and you always had a chance to see Ricardo Lopez, even when the opposition wasn't so great. I kind of ding him a little bit. Was it Rosendo Alvarez that turned out to be his rival? And I remember those two fights. He really, really struggled. He showed a lot of mettle, though, and he did win that rematch. Very, very close. But I just feel his opposition was just slightly lesser than the other guys. So if I had to choose, if I had to put them in order, it would be Donaire, Chocolatito, and then Ricardo Lopez.
Yeah, I think you bring up good points. I think the problem with Lopez is that maybe we in general, we as boxing journalists, we don't pay as much attention to the strawweights, to the smallest guys sometimes. So I think he fought a lot of good fighters, but maybe we just weren't aware of them. That's more of a gut thing, but I think Gonzalez was in bigger fights, certainly.
Sure was.
And listen, this is what I got to say about Donaire. He was my favorite fighter for years, for the reasons that you stated. I mean, that power and the flair and just the excitement that he brought to the ring was just remarkable. And he was fighter of the year one year, right? So a special fighter. I just think that Lopez for sure and Gonzalez too, I think were better boxers than Darchinyan. Darchinyan and Gonzalez, well, they probably had just as much power. But I think there was something more spectacular about Donaire's knockout.
Yeah, he was explosive.
Than either of the other two. I mean, that first Darchinyan fight was just absolutely epic. And I think that Donaire, where Donaire had his problems in his career, was above 118.
Yeah.
So that's actually sort of a mark in his favor that, he had some problems in his career, but it was always above 118 pounds. 118 below, he was virtually unbeatable.
Yeah.
I think he was unbeatable until, did anybody beat him at 118?
I think he might have lost
before Inoue
decision. Oh, you're talking about Chocolatito?
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Donaire. Did anybody beat him at 118 and below besides Inoue? No.
Yeah, nobody. I believe he had
Rosendo Sanch, a guy named
second fight loss, like in his second pro fight or something like that. And regarding Ricardo Lopez, you mentioned a lot of great names. At the beginning, names that when I was a kid I used to watch on Wild World Sports, and they were still around. Guys like Michael Carbajal, and
there's these guys too.
Yeah, but you know what? And I guess that's why I ding Ricardo Lopez, because they were only 3 pounds above him, and he never moved up. So it's possible that he would beat them.
That's an interesting point. That's what Gonzalez did, and the prevailing wisdom was that Gonzalez went too high. I think
may have.
Yeah, so that's the danger that you face when you move up in weight, like unnaturally, because obviously Lopez could make strawweight, so he was dominating, so that was his division, so that's where he stayed. I would feel weird sort of dinging him for that, but I get your point. To push yourself, to test yourself, maybe you move up a weight class and see what you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, either way, I feel like now the way boxing is, we tend to, perhaps unfairly, and I don't know if this is right or not, but we tend to, weigh a little bit more, give more credence to those who do move up in weights as opposed to those who stay in one division. And that wasn't always the case. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I think ultimately it depends on who you beat when you do move up. But certainly, like I said, Ricardo Lopez, one of my favorite fighters to watch. Just if you guys have not seen this guy, it was poetry. The way he boxed, the way he moved, the way he set guys up, it was just it was insane to watch. And the kind of shots, his uppercuts. I mean, I get it. People still throw uppercuts. You watch Ricardo Lopez though, and you'll think it's a lost art. You'll say, well, I haven't seen uppercuts like that before.
Yeah. If he were a lightweight or a welterweight or middleweight, I think he would have been enormous.
Yeah, super.
So you get lost as a strawweight. It's a rare case when a guy that small gets significant attention. Carbajal broke through, and also because a lot due to his
on
power.
Network television too.
Big power, and he had good exposure. And then Gonzalez did it, and Gonzalez actually sort of just busted it wide open because he became number one pound for pound as a little tiny fighter.
Right.
So it's tough. It's tough But here we're giving them their props right now.
Right. Give them their flowers while they're still here.
So all these guys that we're talking about, just great fighters, and you could probably make cases for other fighters that we haven't even discussed here. Maybe that I mentioned at the beginning, but we haven't really discussed. So. Look at Juan Francisco Estrada.
Right, he's another one.
Look at So Rungvisai. Look what he did to Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Mark Johnson's a guy we haven't talked. Johnny Tapia. Yeah. Johnny Tapia was so much fun to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
He's the one I thought about as well when I was he was sort of like a shooting star though, in the sense that I feel like his reign didn't last long. I remember that beautiful victory over Danny Romero. But it seems like he didn't. His reign at the top wasn't very long for one reason or.
He had a long career, but as we know, he was a little bit self-destructive.
Right. He was not consistently good, I think. That's not true. He was always good, but he could have been so much more. So it's a sad story, but he's also a good candidate. Even guys like Paul Ayala. You could go on and on and on. Lots and lots of great fighters.
One of the things about the three guys that we sort of settled on, Lopez, Gonzalez, and Donaire. One thing about them that they have in common is that they were all pros. They were all really committed, disciplined, as far as I know, disciplined guys who worked really hard, who did things the right way. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that played a role in how great they are. And I think in a way it's the same
right.
way.
And it's crazy that the story of Donaire may not be over. I mean, we saw what he just did, and who knows what else he could go on to do. And
Gonzalez too.
Yeah, exactly. So we may have to come back to circle back to this topic at some point in the future, maybe a year or two from now. We shall see. But definitely good stuff in the toe-to-toe. And with that, that's going to do it for this week's show. We want to thank Errol Spence Jr. and Gary Antonio Russell for coming on. Don't forget, guys, Saturday night, PBC on Showtime returns with one of the year's best matchups as Guillermo Rigondeaux and Riel-Casimero face off for Casimero's WBO World Bantamweight belt. Action starts on Showtime at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll recap that next week, along with a big preview of the super bout between Errol Spence Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, plus much more right here on the PBC podcast.